This is Children's Book Radio. Welcome back to Children's Book Radio, the podcast about children's books. This is show number 14 for Wednesday, July 18th, 2007. My name is Sabrina Weissler, and I'm the host for this podcast. I am an avid reader of books for all ages and the parent of twins named Logan and Madison, who recently turned 2. I would like to welcome you to Children's Book Radio if you are a new listener. Our subscriber base continues to grow with parents, teachers, students, and many other people who love children's books. Also, thanks to all of our listeners for telling their friends about the excellent books we discuss on Children's Book Radio. Please keep it up. If you have any comments, book recommendations, or just want to say hi, please send an email or an MP3 to be included in the podcast to sabrina@teachtopia.com. I encourage you to go right now to childrensbookradio.com. It is here that you will be able to get a list of all of the books we have discussed, order them if you'd like, and also find out how to subscribe to the podcast. Our website has an archive of all of our past shows for you to play right from your browser or to download to the device of your choice. Please support our website by visiting our advertisers and by purchasing the books we review through our online bookstore. If you are interested in advertising on our website or want to sponsor a show or shows, please write to sales@teachtopia.com and mention Children's Book Radio. A special thanks to Mark Leonard for providing the Teachtopia Network theme song for our podcasts. Remember, if you are a teacher or parent, make teachtopia.com your start page to always ensure a safe search engine. This episode of Children's Book Radio will feature an interview with the famous and very gracious Jane Yolen, who has written over 300 books for children and young adults. Many of you may be familiar with her work, and for those of you who are not, you're about to be introduced to an author who will likely become one of your favorites. In addition to the interview, I will also be reviewing 2 of her books, How Dinosaurs Say Goodnight and Welcome to the Sea of Sand. These books are for younger children, but please visit her website and our bookstore to view titles for all age levels and many different genres. Newsweek magazine called Jane Yolen America's Hans Christian Andersen, and she has also been called the most prolific author of our times. I conducted this interview on the phone while I was at my home in the U.S., and Jane Yolen was at her home in Scotland. Here is the interview. Our audience is very technology savvy, given that we are heard on the internet or often subscribed to through iTunes with people listening on their iPods. You seem to have embraced new media in that you have a personal website with a journal, and you're also a narrator yourself for several of your books. Do you think that anything is lost in the potential reader now becoming a listener? Or do you think something is gained in that you, as the storyteller, are literally using your own voice?
Me, I'm stuck in the age of books. And that's how I grew up. I love the smell of books. I love the look of books. I like to hold books. I like to go to bed with books. I like to sit outside on a chair with the wind blowing and the sun coming down and read my book. I'm not comfortable with something electronic for my reading. I do, as you say, I have a journal, I have all that sort of stuff. But I'm really, at my age, stuck in the world of books. But it's also a good thing. I'm a professional storyteller. And I think hearing stories is different than reading stories. I think hearing a storyteller and the voice and the attitude and the sound and the way a storyteller can shape the story differently gives you new insights, just as an illustrator can give you new insights into the book, into characters, into place that you might not have entirely on your own. That's good and that's bad. Sometimes we want to have those insights on our own. So I think it's both. I think it both can be limiting and it can be expansive.
Okay, one of the books we're going to be reviewing on our podcast is How Do Dinosaurs Say Goodnight? So I have a question for you.
Sure.
Actually, this question is about how you worked with the illustrator. Did you have a vision of how you wanted to see the dinosaurs like be in children's-sized beds with human parents, or how did that whole concept come about?
Well, to go back even a little further, an editor that I had worked with for a number of years called and said, my little boy is 3 years old, he hates to go to bed and he loves dinosaurs. Can you do anything for him? So it was her push that got me started. And I had 3 children, and my 2 little boys had adored dinosaurs. And in fact, they had liked dinosaurs so much that I, who cannot sew, embroidered pillows for them with dinosaurs on them. Now that probably has more to do with my being a mom than anyone who can, sew, but I did it for them. So I knew how little boys and little girls can love dinosaurs. It's very big. So I sat down and I worked on what came out to be How Do Dinosaurs Say Goodnight. And the editor said to me, we have an artist I would love to have on this book. His name is Mark Teague. And I said, did he do the book, I think it's called The Dragon Room? She said, yeah, and I'm not sure that's exactly the title, but that was, I had the right book. I said, I love his work. She said, good, I'm going to see if he will do it. And so he did. Now, I got to see some of his drawings for the book, but that's not usual. Usually, when you write a book, the illustrator does their stuff, then you get to see it when it's further along. But he was the one who said, I'm having trouble doing just the same dinosaur over and over again. What if we make this a series of different dinosaurs? Now, originally in my head, it was one dinosaur. It was called How Does a Dinosaur Say Goodnight? But when he came up with that idea, it seemed so perfect that we changed it to How Do Dinosaurs Say Goodnight? So the idea of having different families, different ethnic groups, different backgrounds was his idea.
Okay. And also he came up with the idea to have the names of the dinosaurs in each page of the book. That's also a favorite part.
Yeah. Okay. And that's visual, the whole visual thing is his, of course. But now when I write new ones, I have his pictures in mind, in my head. And I know the sort of thing he's going to do.
And did you have any idea when you guys were doing this together how popular the series was?
Oh, you never know.
Okay.
My editor said, this is a slam dunk. And I said, Bonnie, I've been in this children's book business for long enough to know there is no such thing. Because, for example, when Harry Potter first came out, it had already been turned down by many publishers in Britain. And its first printing was 500 copies because they didn't think it was going to sell very well. So we don't know anything. It's all guesses.
Right. And also one more thing about that book, just last night, Jody, my husband, he read to our kids when they were going to sleep that book. And he told me how, they wanted to kiss their stuffed dinosaur after reading it. And do you ever get tired of hearing anecdotes of how your books are used?
No, I love hearing. Let me tell you an anecdote I just heard that has moved me so much about that book. The Washington Post just came out with an article on a terrible accident that happened in Virginia on July 4th when a group of people at a small town had a fireworks display. And something happened, and instead of shooting up into the air, one of the fireworks things went out into the audience. It hit a lot of people. 11 were taken to the hospital, including a little boy who was concussed, he was 3 years old, and they had to put him into an induced coma. And his mother was badly burned, and she was taken off to a different hospital. So I guess the father was with her. The 7-year-old brother had seen the whole thing. And the uncle went to sit with the little boy as he was coming out of the coma and read How Did Dinosaurs Say Goodnight to him. And that was reported in the Washington Post. Well,
oh my God.
You can imagine, absolutely moved.
Yeah.
So my daughter is also my assistant back in the States, and she did some research. She's also been a private detective at one point, and she found out the name and address of the kid, and we're sending him and his brother a whole collection of the dinosaur books and the little stuffed dinosaur, and a book for his older brother, for the 7-year-old who had seen all this and was so brave. A book called Mightier Than a Sword, Folk Tales from Around the World for Strong Boys.
It's a wonderful story.
You know, how can you not?
Yeah,
when that happens and you know you've had a little hand, without knowing that it's going to happen, in helping someone.
Yeah, the power of the book.
Yes.
The power of
yes.
Okay, and then the next question, we're also going to be reviewing Welcome to the Sea of Sand, which my kids just love because they're obsessed right now with cactuses. My question for you is, this is a beautiful picture book. It just, describes the animals, the plant life in the Sonora Desert. Can you tell me the kind of research that goes into writing a book like this?
Well, I have been to the Desert Museum in the Sonora Desert 3 or 4 times. And I went, when I was researching this book, I was staying with friends in Tucson and Phoenix and went around to actually look at and gather as much material as I could from the area. There are, I think, 4 books in that series. There's one on the rainforest, one on the swampland, one on the Arctic. And I've been in each of those places, and I take notes, but I've also done a lot of reading and occasionally watch videos that have information about it as well.
Okay. And another thing I wanted to ask you about, I was reading on your website how you are involved with promoting literature through writing contests. Mm-hmm. How do you think, our listeners as parents could best inspire our children to become good writers?
I think, first of all, the easy way is if there is a local children's book writer in the area, if there's some way they can get roped into helping on some kind of a writing contest. It grows and grows and grows. They don't have to actually do the judging. They could just be there to hand out prizes. They could be there to say, look, when I was a child, I was writing or I wasn't writing. I wasn't winning contests, but I was writing. I write every day. I get better at it every day because I write. It's like a muscle that I exercise every day. If they're there, someone that a child says, oh, that's a famous person. They're famous as a writer. And they can relate to how that writer was as a child. That can be very helpful. But of course, there aren't necessarily famous children's book writers in every area, every community. So the next thing to do is to still have writing workshops or writing contests for the kids with maybe a local newspaper person.
Okay.
Other kinds of writers. Because I think one of the things that kids have to understand that writers have fears about putting stuff down on paper too. We're afraid of, can we finish? Sometimes we don't have ideas. Sometimes the editor is harder on us than a teacher is ever harder on a child's paper. And when they hear that, when they hear that I'm still rejected, that my books are still rejected, but I don't let it hurt me, that is a huge difference between, here's a superstar, you can't possibly go there.
Right. And then I guess my last question would just be if you wanted to tell our listeners what we should be on the lookout for this year. What do you have coming out?
Well, I have another dinosaur book. It's called How Do Dinosaurs Go to School?
Okay.
I have another baby bear book. It's called Baby Bear's Big Dreams. I have a book with my son Jason, who's a photographer, and it's called Shape Me a Rhyme. And I have a young adult novel with my friend Robert J. Harris, and it's the fourth book of our Scottish books. And it's about a boy whose family are really, in a sense, sharecroppers on the Great Laird's land. And they and all the other Highlanders who are doing the same thing are thrown off the land because the Laird has discovered that he can make more money out of sheep than having his clan, his cousins, on his land. And they're burned out of their houses, and they're shipped off to America, Newfoundland, Nova Scotia, and Australia. And this is a family that finds their way to Virginia. North Carolina. And if you look at what happened to the Scots who were burned out of their land, there are more famous Scots in American history who became judges and became governors and became all kinds of important people because they worked so hard once they got to America. Really pushed out of their farmland. They had to find some other things to do, and they worked really hard.
Sounds exciting. Well, thank you so much.
Well, good. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye. Thank you very much, Jane. Now on to a review of How Do Dinosaurs Say Goodnight. This book is of a series that starts with How Do Dinosaurs, and then has such titles as How Do Dinosaurs Get Well Soon, How Do Dinosaurs Go to School, and more. How Do Dinosaurs Say Goodnight was written by Jane Yolen and illustrated by Mark Teague. The book starts off with a description of the many ways in which children stall going to bed. They may stomp their feet, get very loud, or throw their teddy bears. On each page, we see a personified and naughty dinosaur with human parents. The type of dinosaur on each page changes, as do the ethnicity of the human parents. The illustrations are very colorful and fill up the pages from end to end with the name of each dinosaur, Pteranodon, Triceratops, and Allosaurus, to name a few, hidden among the toys, hats, and furniture in the child's bedroom. What I noticed right away was how the dinosaurs are meant to sleep in child-sized beds, and this has comedic results when they try to fit on them. The book shifts as the author describes good or model going to bed behaviors, such as turning out the light and giving mom a kiss. The magic in this book is the smooth language, the rhyming phrases, and engaging and memorable illustrations. If you have yet to read a book in this Jane Yolen series, I recommend you to start off with this modern classic. The next book by Jane Yolen that we are going to look at is Welcome to the Sea of Sand. This book, like so many others by Jane Yolen, shows the diversity of the type of work she produces. This book is in a series of natural landscape books, and she explores the Sonora Desert and introduces the reader to vocabulary words such as ocelot, saguaro, and hilas. It is through her use of words like these that I can see how this book can appeal to both toddlers who do not understand this vocabulary and older kids who may have learned about the desert and its inhabitants in school. Toddlers will also like the book, though, because they'll enjoy the pictures and learning the new words. The book is not a large reference book by any means, but rather a book that could inspire a reader to learn the words from the book and be encouraged to study regional geography such as the desert. My young children are currently very intrigued by cactus plants and how prickly they are, so it is for this reason that the book appeals to them. More poetry than prose, Yolen takes the reader on a journey through the sandscape to meet exotic bugs, a family of ocelots, and a lush field of poppies. It is the color in the drawings that may surprise a reader whose only view of a desert is one of sand. In the tradition of children's book radio, I am not going to share all the gems available in these two books, but rather encourage you to go out and read them yourself. Thank you very much, Jane, for the interview, and thanks to all of our listeners for tuning into Children's Book Radio. We'll be back soon with another edition of the podcast. Bye for now.